Yeah, thank you guys so much. I'm gonna do. We're gonna go into One Winged Angel a little bit. Um, just because I do have a PowerPoint here. We can kind of quickly go through it, and then I can kind of talk about some points that I made in my paper that I did about Uematsu's One Winged Angel. Basically, what I had to do for my music history class, my last music history class in music school in college, was basically pick a piece that you really like and pick something that you think deserves to be a part of our anthology, basically, our music anthology. Where, like, you have the sheet music, you have the scores, and you analyze the scores and you talk about it in college, right? So basically, my professor was like, yeah, like, let me know what one piece is the best piece that we would put into the anthology that you think other people could learn from, that you think is important enough for us to research and, like, discuss. Yeah, it was super fun. And I was like, you know what? I have to do One Winged Angel. Like, it is so amazing what he did. So, yeah, it's got my last name up there, but I don't care because you guys already know my last name, right? So, again, I already showed this a little bit earlier, but we can go through the biography. So, Uematsu was born in Kochi, Japan, March 21st, 1959. He was self-taught in piano. He went to Kanagawa University, but he graduated with a degree in English. So again, no formal music instruction here. He was hired at Square, met with the director Hironobu Sakaguchi, and worked on the Final Fantasy game. And because it succeeded when they thought it was going to fail, because it succeeded, Uematsu was hired to continue composing music until he left Square in 2004. So here's the piece, One Winged Angel. So it's in the Final Fantasy VII soundtrack and the game. Iconic theme for the final boss, Sephiroth. Hopefully that's not a spoiler by now. Freaking, the game came out in 97. Get with it, guys, if you don't know the final boss yet. So the first Final Fantasy soundtrack that was actually made on the PlayStation. Okay, if you think about it, Final Fantasy VI was still on the SNES, and then they actually moved to the PlayStation for Final Fantasy VII. And that allowed for more expansive sound fonts and more creative freedom for Uematsu, right? As opposed to the SNES and NES, he was very limited in terms of what sounds he could actually use. So the genre of One Winged Angel is like rock symphonic with some operatic elements. And this is basically quoted from him, from Uematsu himself. Said, take Jimi Hendrix and mix that with Stravinsky. I wanted to know what it would sound like to mix those two. And I think it did a pretty good job doing that, honestly. Because One Winged Angel beginning is oddly similar to the beginning of Jimi Hendrix's Purple Haze. I think it's 2013. Right there. I know it's not the best quality, but let's do it one more time. Okay. Keep that in mind. Keep that right in there. In your head, what that sounded like. Okay. One more time. Jimi Hendrix. One Winged Angel. Yeah. So that's an example right there. It's literally like the same thing. He literally took the beginning of Purple Haze and put it in One Winged Angel. So we'll go obviously more in depth of other things that Uematsu borrowed from other composers and musicians. But again, this is kind of like a very short thing that I had to basically present to the class. Be like, why did I choose this piece? So again, orchestral inspirations and arrangement, right? It is an example of the legitimacy and power of electronically produced music, right? This is all pretty much, most of it was just electronically produced, right? It wasn't acoustic live instrumentation or anything like that. It was all through the sound fonts of the PlayStation. But it's still, the writing is so good, right? It's so effective what he did in One Winged Angel. So I felt like, you know what, this is an example of how good electronic music could be, right? Something that's electronically produced, like through MIDI or whatever, right? doesn't matter if it's not full orchestra type thing. Like, it's still if the arrangement or like composition itself like holds its own, you know what I mean, then it's a good freaking track. So I definitely yeah, this isn't even my opinion. It is the most complex piece of the entire Final Fantasy VII soundtrack, and it included vocals for the first time, which were, I believe, actual vocals, like recorded vocals. No idea how they were able to get that onto the CD, but I kind of remember reading a little bit about how they did it. But again, it shows his creativity and skill in making a cohesive soundtrack that perfectly matches the game's storyline, right? Yeah, okay, so that's what I thought. Yeah, they're actual live vocals. All right, let's get into it, shall we? So this is actually like the last thing I did. Like, I dated this like December 13th, 2016. That was 3 days before I graduated from Nazareth College. So this must have been one of the last things that I did or like had to do in order to like complete the class and complete all of my school stuff. So let me scroll through here a little bit. So basically, One Winged Angel was released along with the rest of the Final Fantasy VII soundtrack in 97, right? But when creating the final boss fight between Cloud and Sephiroth, he had an idea. He was curious to know the result of combining musical elements from Jimi Hendrix, which we kind of already saw, right, the very beginning of Purple Haze, and Igor Stravinsky, okay? And he felt like there was a common element between the two composers, and the product of those musical elements it's definitely heard at the end of Final Fantasy VII. So the genre, he said, is rock. He explained that when the Black Mages played the Advent Children version of One Winged Angel, he felt that the piece was finally complete. But it required a symphony orchestra and choir to accurately recreate the timbres he implemented with the PlayStation sound fonts that are heard in the original game. So it took that, like, that's what he was hearing in his head when he was composing. He was hearing a symphony orchestra and choir, you know what I mean? And he had to work with that and have these sound fonts and try to make it sound as close to that as possible. So yeah, I can hear the similarities between Uematsu's One Winged Angel and Stravinsky's Rite of Spring. They both interject certain phrases and sections into the piece to give a sense of disjunct and unpredictability, right? And I had to choose an ism to represent the piece, if there was one, and I said that primitivism is a reasonable label to describe the nature and story behind Sephiroth. So let's quickly, I already have the One Winged Angel up here, but let's do Rite of Spring so you guys can kind of hear. So again, Rite of Spring. Can you kind of hear some things that are a bit like One Winged Angel? Yeah, so basically, during the final battle, again, spoiler alert, but during the final battle, Sephiroth is not really human, okay? He takes on, like, this angelic, almost, form. That's why it's called One Winged Angel. But it actually has, it says One Winged Angel, but it's actually, he has 6 white wings protruding from his lower body, and then 1 black wing that's replacing his right arm. And that's the basis for the title One Winged Angel. Yeah, so when he was asked about his process for composing One Winged Angel, Uematsu said the following in an interview. We wanted to see if we could insert a theme song into Final Fantasy VII. It never really happened. There is no song that really has lyrics except for the final track. The song title is One Winged Angel. That would be the only one that, technically speaking, has some sort of lyrics, but even that was an experiment. That wasn't an orchestrated song that was directly inserted to the game. We had to heavily reduce it so that it would fit. The experimentation with new ways to insert music was probably the best thing to happen with Final Fantasy VII for me personally. That's what he said. And I kind of go into more detail, like since PlayStation introduced CD-ROMs instead of cartridges, it allowed composers to compress pre-recorded music and insert it into the game CD. And it was a massive progression from the 16-bit era, right? NES, SNES. But Uematsu was one of the few composers to solely utilize the chipset and sound fonts within the PlayStation console to make Final Fantasy VII soundtrack. He could have just recorded, and then, insert, compress and insert, right? But he didn't. He literally still took the sound fonts and chipsets in the PlayStation and used that to compose and to, score Final Fantasy VII, which I give him mad kudos for, because he basically limited himself in a sense, right? And I think he works really well under limits, and having some sort of limitations set in place, right? SNES, that was very limiting back then, trying to compose with that set, that chipset. But he composed some really great tracks from Final Fantasy VI, Final Fantasy IV, even with that limitation on there, he still did a really great job. So I think he kind of works well when there is some type of limitation in place. And so he might have just chose to do that because he knew that having that would help him compose and not be like, oh, I could record this, and oh, let me record this, then it's just too much, right? There's too many options, and then you get flustered because you don't know which one to do. Kirk Hamilton, who is an editor of the well-known video game website Kotaku, he accounted for his first playthrough of Final Fantasy VII and realized that the only sound coming from his headphones was that of Nobuo Uematsu's work, right? There's no voice acting. In the original, OG Final Fantasy VII, there's no voice acting, no ambient sound. There's only a very small amount of sound effects. And so Hamilton compares this with the Final Fantasy XIII, right? And 13 had full voice acting throughout the 60-hour storyline, and he said it constantly detracted from the music and mood, which is interesting. So before the technology had advanced to the point of voice acting, video games allowed for the music to be in the spotlight. I agree with that, right? Because of this, I believe it was a brilliant idea for Uematsu to incorporate lyrics only onto the final boss track, right? It separates the piece from the rest of the soundtrack. It's an obvious contrast from the typical ambient, melodious, invigorating tracks that are found in the game. And when you're looking at the YouTube comments on One Winged Angel, it's clear that it's iconic because anyone who's played, right, they're just like, "Est-toi interieur, si la vehementi," in the comments, you just see the lyrics, and they're always saying oh, this is the best track in Final Fantasy VII, this is my favorite. So it's evident in the comments, if you look, that that's their it's separated from all the other tracks in 7. So I believe that that's the track that became Uematsu's claim to fame, in a sense. And in the same interview, Uematsu also said that One Winged Angel is a very good example of an experimental song or result that we didn't really expect from the beginning. In 2006, we had a Final Fantasy concert entitled Voices, and the encore piece was One Winged Angel. An orchestra plus the Black Mages, which is the band that Uematsu was a part of, plus the Black Mages performed the song. And at that moment, I knew that was a complete One Winged Angel. So, again, he's not thinking about the composition from the business aspect. He just simply wanted to create something new and experiment with his own compositional techniques, right? And so the concert he mentioned was held in 2006, February 18th, 2006, at the Pacifico Yokohama Conference and Convention Center in Japan. Blech, that's a mouthful. So I actually watched the performance on YouTube and noticed the crowd went wild when the musicians started playing the beginning chorus. Dun, 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 dun. They just oh my God, they were screaming. Because they knew, just from that couple of seconds, they knew what was being played, right? So it's crazy. It was the last piece of the program, and the reception was absolutely incredible. And the coordinators at the concert must have known that was going to happen, right? Since it was also the encore piece. And so that reaction was for me, like a testament to the popularity and influence that One Winged Angel had on those who played Final Fantasy VII. So because he wrote One Winged Angel using the sound fonts from the PlayStation, there's no original score for the work, right? But I was able to find an orchestral arrangement of the piece that's almost an exact transcription based on the chords and orchestration found in both the game and the movie, Advent Children. And the audio file sounds almost identical to the original track in terms of like the timbre and chord progressions. Because for this paper, I had to find like sheet music, a score for it. So I was like, I found this one that's very, very close. So let's like use this. And so we're going to do some analysis. So when you look at the score, there's actually multiple different time signatures that are present. Okay, so looking at the score, let's just pretend we have the score because I don't have it. But there's many different time signatures present. And they change frequently throughout the piece. And that's something that's similar to Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, right? If you look at Rite of Spring, there's a lot of time sig changes throughout the piece. So that's something that he probably took. Since he did explain that Stravinsky is one of his inspirations for the piece, right? So I think it's safe to assume that he took that and just basically put that into One Winged Angel. So the piece starts out sounding almost atonal with a pounding bass line constantly repeating the E, right? And the chord outline in the first two measures is a tritone between E and B flat, right? With the added perfect fourth interval A. Added fourth. Right? And the tritone is also considered the devil's interval, which is, I think, kind of fitting for Sephiroth, right? And there's accents on each eighth note, which results in the driving rhythm that's kind of similar to Rite of Spring. Rite of Spring also has that driving eighth note like rhythm, although Rite of Spring does do some accents, da 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 da, right? One Winged Angel doesn't really have those accents, but it still takes that eighth note driving rhythm. And then the next two measures introduce some pitch variety, but the constant E is still present in the violin 1, viola, xylophone, piano, and piccolo parts. Both the violin 1 and piccolo section have ear-piercingly high notes in measures 3 and 4, right? And apparently I found something by this online alias, this person who goes by Hatake52, found some blog that this guy made, and he basically did a little bit of analysis, and he said that the high pitches are typically utilized for horror films to create suspense and fear, right? And I think it's, is it Scream? Man, I might have it in the paper, but there's another thing that the high strings, like, it's very similar to a horror film, one of the tracks in a horror film. I think it's Scream, but I might be able to check to make sure. But yeah, when you look at the pitches in like measures 3 and 4, 5 of the 8 pitches are semitones, right? So we have D, D sharp, or E flat, we have E, and we have F, and we have F sharp. Like, dang. Psycho! That might be it. It might be Psycho. I think it's Psycho. Yeah. And so, although it's uncommon, those 8 pitches do represent an octatonic scale. The trumpets play the semitones from E flat to F sharp, while the rest of the players have varied pitches. The 4 measures repeat with the exception of the piccolo, flute, oboe, English horn, and clarinets. And then the excerpt of the first 4 measures are shown below. So let me zoom in on that, so then you guys can actually see it. There we go. Okay, so we have the ba 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 da 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 da, right? Piccolo's just doing a whoop whoop whoop. But yeah, you see all of these notes. Oh yeah, the trumpet has the okay, and this is just a Hold up. There we go. And then you got other ones. Well, that's in B flat, so that's not even actually the right key, but probably this is probably the same thing. Yeah, there we go. But yeah, so you can kind of see, at least I have some excerpts in here. But this is very similar to Rite of Spring. Somewhere in Rite of Spring. Can you hear it? Like, I can hear it in the is it a clarinet that I'm hearing? It sounds like a like I'm hearing that semitone action right in there. Right? So that's one thing. And then let's see. Yeah, there's apparently you can label the chordal ambiguity in measure 8. You can label it as decatonic scale. There's syncopated horn parts that foreshadows upcoming syncopation of the woodwinds, piano, and violins. And it's safe to assume the rhythmic contrast between the phrases was inspired by Stravinsky. Measure 15, there's a slight sense of a hemiola between the triplets in the woodwinds and the tremolo eighth notes in the violins. So hemiola, if you guys don't know, hemiola is basically having like two different rhythms in the same time signature. So like having triplets in like one part and having just regular eighth notes in another part. Those two being played together is called a hemiola. Right? So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and like it's hard for me to do, but that's basically a hemiola. So there's a bit of a hemiola happening in measure 15. Again, it creates that tension, uneasiness, because you're like, whoa, I'm hearing da, 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 triplet, triplet. But then you're hearing 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... So you're like, what's the beat? What exactly, like, right? So trying to figure out what rhythm is actually happening, it's a good way to have that sense of instability, right? And then... measures 21 to 23, we have 7, 8. So unbalanced time signature happening. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Like, it's weird, right? And again, it further promotes that tension and that like nervousness, anxiousness that you feel as the listener. And then by the time it returns to 4/4, we've lost all sense of the tonic. So it's like, it's crazy what he's doing in this piece. So let me pull this up again. So this is what Hatake 52 said. The minim chords that are played before the singing build tension by changing the key a step down and adding a pedal bass that conflicts more and more with the chords used while climbing in pitch. Examples are the C sharp in bar 30 and the C flat major chord in bar 35. So the score I'm using has an extra measure for that key change. So corresponding bars are 31, 36, shown below. So here's 31, here's 36. Just the fragment of a couple, because like the score itself is like this long. So, but yeah, you can kind of see. Right. I'm assuming, yeah. But yeah, and then we've got this up here as well. So the C flat major chord he's referring to in measure 36 is spelled as a B natural major chord in this score. So let me see here. Yeah, so B's right here, the B. So C flat, right, is the same thing as B natural, right? So this is the chord that guy is referring to, is this chord right here. Right? Exactly. And then, okay, so measure 39, the chorus comes with the Latin lyrics, right? So, according to Patrick Ashmore, I don't know exactly who that guy is, but according to him, Uematsu's lyrics for One Winged Angel were actually taken from Karl Orff's Carmina Burana. I'm sure some of you maybe know about Karl Orff, yeah? Carmina Burana. But the first two lyrical lines of One Winged Angel come from the second half of Carmina Burana. In Taberna is like the actual, I guess, name of that song. But the lines Sos imanis et inanis are present in O Fortuna as well. And the verse Veni, Veni, Venias, Ne me mori fatias is taken from the third section of Carmina Burana, Cor d'Amour. Let me actually bring this back up here so you can see right here. So first two lyrical lines are taken from here. The lines Sos imanis et inanis are present in this. Then Veni, Veni, Venias, Ne me mori fatias is taken from the third section of that, which is this one. Then the final verse contains lyrics from the penultimate, so second to last, song in Carmina Burana, which is Ave Formosissima. Ave Formosissima. But unlike the rest of the lyrics, soprano line, the Gloriosa Generosa, does not appear in the same line in Carmina Burana. Gloriosa, though, is found on the fourth line of the Ave Formosissima, and Generosa is on the eighth line. Heck yeah. Hey, Crit, what's up? So in terms of the harmonic content, right, the tenor and soprano lines are in perfect fifths until the ter in terius. Soprano line descends a half step, creating a tritone, another tritone, with the tenor, and a diminished triad with the tenor and alto. For the vehementi, the chorus sings a B-flat minor triad, which is nowhere close to the D minor key we're supposedly in, right? So here we got the score. So we have a B-flat minor, right? B-flat minor triad, but we're supposed to be in D minor. How the heck do we have this in this key? So again, crazy. So we have right. Oh God. So that's probably tenor clef. No. Oh God. This is really hard to read all this. Like that. So yeah. Right? Right? For the ve, we go to a B flat minor. So again, it confuses you because you're like, what key are we in? Right? But then the chorus will go to the right? So right? Goes right back to the D minor. So like it still works somehow. Like I don't know how it works, but it works. So again, it kind of reestablishes the key on Sephiroth's name, right? So the translation is burning inside with violent anger, Sephiroth. That's what it actually translates to. But it's kind of cool because every time you hear his name, it actually goes to the tonic and like it reestablishes our tonic center. So I just think that's so cool because like Sephiroth's so important. His name is so important. You have to do it on the tonic. So, and then again, when we have this, right, the sol si manis, again, the key is just, forget it. The key is just, you know, we'll just pretend we don't know the key again, basically. the pitches outline another B flat minor chord on sos, but then go to the minor 4, the E flat minor on nis. So, si, ma, nis. Sos. Oh god, E flat minor. So, si, ma, nis. E flat minor. Yeah. So. Oh, sorry. Yeah, B flat minor. Yeah. So, si, ma, nis. That's probably a different chord for the sol, si, na, nis. But yeah, you basically have that just pounding the B flat. And then the sol, si, ma, nis, et inanis means fate. And then like a hyphen. Monstrous and empty. But yeah, the score, continues. The chorus repeats the sol, si, ma, nis. And then in the score, at least, there's an interjection by the woodwinds in the following measure. And then, yet again, Uematsu's utilizing those hemiolas, using the triplets in the woodwinds and then the eighth notes everywhere else. He also uses syncopation in the orchestra after the chorus sings the Sephiroth. Right, Sephiroth, ba-ba-ba-ba, right? Sephiroth, ba-ba-ba-ba. So it's really cool. And then because of that, it kind of hints, I said it hints towards the rock element of the track. And then, okay, so measures 71 to 76 in the score are derived from the Advent Children version. Oh, okay, never mind. I said I was omitting them, so I omitted them. Measure 77, pieces modulated to E minor. Okay, sure, D minor to E minor, okay. Just do whatever the heck you want, Uematsu, sure. The horns and the violins move chromatically, but in parallel sixths. So, yeah. Da, 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 da. Right, so here's the triplet. Right, triplet right here. So, right, and then violin 2 is okay, so I only... Oh, the viola section mimics the horns. Sweet. Okay, so viola is... E. Oh, God. Hold up. Is that right? Yeah. So apparently is that right? That's is a D, F, oh, that's G sharp, A, yeah. Right? I think I'm right. F, D, yeah. So it actually ends probably more like... So interesting that they actually don't end on the same note. They end basically in a second. But yeah, so again, we've got this triplet happening here. Then I know this is like a long music theory lesson. I'm sorry. I'm just so excited. I love Uematsu so much. So, let's kind of go through here a little bit more just to see if there's anything else noteworthy to mention. Yeah, we've got more time signature changes. Key signature changes back to D minor. But musicians only have 2 measures of 4/4 before it changes again to 6/8 for 3 measures. So again, it's kind of similar to Rite of Spring, how it's like changing time signatures all over the place throughout the piece. And so it kind of destroys your idea of like, or your perception of like a pulse, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like, okay. It's really hard to actually feel stable when listening to this track. So, and then chorus, Veni, veni, venias, ne me morifatias, which translates to come, come, oh come, do not let me die. They alternate between D, E flat, and C sharp for the first half of the line. Repeat it 3 times before the sopranos and altos begin singing the Gloriosa Generosa. And the violin 1 section has grace notes. Oh, there it is. There have been some rumors that Uematsu took inspiration from the shower scene in the horror movie Psycho when making this piece. So let's quickly listen to that. Yeah, there it is. Right? And then like the... Right there. You hear that? Dun, 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 dun. Same, like, literally the same note, too. Right? Literally the same note. Like, Uematsu, what the heck? Alright, bye, C-Symphony. No worries. Thank you so much for stopping by. I appreciate it. Heck yeah. Like, there have been rumors, but I don't know if I actually found him saying that he did. Because I feel like if I found it, I would have put it in the paper, unless I found it after I submitted the paper. But there's definitely been rumors that he took inspiration from that. I don't remember if he said he did as well, though. But yeah, you can hear it, right? It's like so obvious. So yeah, it's crazy. So the first violins even play that pattern while the sopranos and altos start to sing the Gloriosa Generosa. And yeah, while the choir is repeating it, then the instrumentation gets even more like chromatic and like denser. So yeah, and then I talk about how the piece loops, you know, at that certain point, starting back at the initial choral Estuans and Terius. It was to allow the music to be continuously present while the player battles Sephiroth, right? Because you need it to loop. You know, it'd be really weird if it just ended and you're still trying to still trying to beat the boss. But yeah, the score that I found reflects the Advent Children version of the piece, and because that's part of the movie, they basically scored it long enough for, you know, for the movie, and so they didn't have to be, you know, there's no need to loop it. So, but yeah, I think that's pretty much it, though. Yeah, that's basically it. So, in summary, I'm just going to read off what I typed. Uematsu's One-Winged Angel has been conceived as the most iconic and best villain theme song in the history of video games. His usage of ideas and motives from other composers, such as Stravinsky, Jimi Hendrix, and Bernard Herrmann, who is the composer for Psycho Theme. Let's just pretend that he said he took inspiration from that as well, because I can hear it, at least. Emphasizes his musical tastes and appreciation for other significant musicians. With his musical creativity, he accurately portrayed the struggle and exhilaration while facing off with Sephiroth in-game. Per Hatake 52, this piece has won many gaming magazine awards and public opinion polls as best boss battle song ever made. Say that 5 times fast. Best boss battle song. Due to these statements, I believe One-Winged Angel should be included in our music history anthology. He is proof that you do not need to be formally educated in music to be successful as a composer. But yeah, that's basically what I had today for our Theory Thursday. I guess, what? We should put something in the chat. Put M in the chat if you want me to go over Mitsuda next. Go and watch some videos that Sab Irene has made or something. Oh, wow.